Engine is now ready to go back in the Grand Prix, and what I did was I used some high temp loom on the wiring, and I think this is around 400 degrees is what it withstands. So I had enough loom to go to here, but then this is a larger bundle of wires, so I ordered some different loom, and it'll be a lot easier to do this front part when it's in the car than the back part. And then on the back, this oxygen sensor that goes to the downpipe, I wrapped in the same loom. I got this stud off of a 3.6 DeVille, I think it was a DeVille or a Seville, that this was the stud for the ground strap, I think for the alternator. So it just has the same thread as a transmission, it holds this bracket in, and then I could put one of those U-nuts to hold this wire right here up away from the axle, and then this will hold the wiring here away from the axle as well. And then I have this routed this way. Instead of going underneath the oil pan, it actually just goes up against the engine block, runs along here, mates up. I have it zip tied to the crank angle sensor and the knock sensor, so everything is just really nice and tucked in there. Then I might put a U-nut around here just to hold this up. So all the wiring in the back is good and on the top is good, just not loomed all the way. Then in the front, once I get in the car, I'll mess with the wiring a little bit more. I'm gonna do the same thing on the starter wires right here. So I'm gonna probably use a U-nut, tuck these up here, run some loom around it, because then you don't really have, I might have to shorten them actually. So once I get the starter, I can figure that out. And then this stuff, really, I just need to bundle it together and put it in some sheathing, because you don't have to change anything on the harness. So this is an 08 Grand Prix. This is the newer DeVille transmission, the 4T80. It's 2002. And on the transmission plug that plugs into this, so the factory harness from the Grand Prix plugs into the plug right here. The only wire you have to change, or not really change, you just have to jump it. So this is orientation wise. So this is the top of the plug right here. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, where's A? So you can see A, you might not be able to see it, but A is this green wire right there. And the wire that you are doing is E right here, this light red one. And you're jumping it to, on the bottom of the plug, this white one right here, which is U. And I just cut it, soldered them together, heat shrinked it, and that's the only wire you have to change, as long as you have the newer style transmission to a newer style LS4 in the wiring harness. So it's not a bunch of different wiring. And then on the TCU, this little computer right here, before the LS4 King was saying that you had to swap it with the 4T80 version of this computer, but you can use this one and just invert, the tuner just inverts something, I think, with the shift solenoid. So I'm going to most likely have this remote tuned and have everything just, he'll invert it, he'll change all the shift logic in the transmission, do some stuff with the engine and the cam, and we should be good to go. So let's get this put in the car. So I'm going to pull the Durango out of the shop, push the Grand Prix in, and I can't wait to see her in the car. I now finally have the LS in the Grand Prix, and it looks good in there. So I did see the car with the LS when I first bought it, and it looked great. But the issue was the tranny. The tranny looked very small, and now the tranny is very, very large in this thing. So one thing I need to do is I need to make tranny cooler lines, which shouldn't be that big of a deal. And then I need to loom this harness. This goes to the ECMs and the TCU right there. And then it also plugs into the ABS pump, these two plugs right there. I need to put the battery back in there, and then I can put the fuse box, which that plug plugs into. And then there's a bunch of there's two other plugs right there. I need to modify the exhaust. I don't know why that downpipe didn't bolt up to the exhaust. I think that company's out of business. Maybe that's why. Maybe their downpipes didn't actually fit very well. So I'll probably just cut that resonator off the exhaust and then just weld a straight pipe in, and then I can reclock that flange. And I also think I need to wallow the holes out a little bit on that downpipe. So there's another issue I'm having. I'm not exactly sure what the issue is. Well, I do know what the issue is, but I'm not sure what's causing it. So this driver's side axle, I just went and grabbed one out of the yard, and for some reason it's bound on the transmission side and it's not on the hub side. It's really weird. The hub side looks perfectly fine, and the transmission side's like completely squished. So I don't want that much load on there. Could just be an axle thing, but I'll just order a brand new axle and swap them out. And I really like how it dropped the car quite a bit with the engine in there. It actually looks pretty low. The back doesn't look that low, which is very unfortunate. And look at that. Oh, I hate sunken in wheels. So we're gonna have to do something about that. But I think I have some 21s over there that I can make fit on this thing, which the rear will fit perfectly. And the fronts, we'll just probably have to get some adapters. So that's coming. We'll get 21s on this thing, get proper offset 21s. And I need to put some big brakes on this. Also, you know, that's later on down the road. I need to worry about some other things like cooling system. I still need to put the radiator in and button some stuff up. I did get the serpentine belt on. We have pretty much everything buttoned up. The one thing I don't like about these GMs is the steering column where it bolts the rack. There's like this boot that goes around it. It's very hard to lift that thing up. I'm not sure if there's a trick, but I don't know the trick, and I just cut a hole in it so I could put the bolt back in. So other than that, we're pretty much ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is push this thing out and pretty much work on it a little bit more tomorrow, since I have to park the Durango back in the shop right here, since the lift in here is a little bit too low for the Durango. If we had lowering springs on the Durango, maybe it might fit under there. So you know, hint, that might be coming. We have some hints over there. But yeah, let's get this thing out of the shop. And you know, I'm really glad to see this engine finally in the car. I saw it when I first bought it, but you know, this is all the difference. It's actually a good engine, good transmission, and it's going to hold the power. I have the engine and the transmission computer. It's the bottom of the airbox, kind of weird, but the airbox goes on top of it. Probably keeps them kind of cool. But we have all the wiring wrapped up right here. So one thing I did have to modify was, not really modify, but I used a pry bar for this AC sensor, this pressure sensor. You just have to bend it this way a little bit because it touches the case of the transmission. I have the wiring harness for the transmission right here, and it just comes up to right here, just away from the exhaust manifold or that exhaust crossover pipe. And then I'll just bundle all of this stuff once I loom everything that goes to the alternator and the AC compressor and the wheel speed sensor, which is this one right here. I was trying to figure out what that was. The wheel speed sensor, I need to route that down there. And then back here, I have the crank angle sensor and the power steering, or the power steering rack sensor. I think it's the position sensor. I just ran it underneath this shift cable, and it just runs along on the other side of this this vent tube, just down underneath the shifter. Let me grab a light right here so you can see. Just runs on the other side of that. Looks really nice and clean. Nothing touches. And then down there by the exhaust manifold, you can see it's just nice and flush against the transmission. And that's also heat protective looms, so I shouldn't have to worry about the wiring or anything being too close to the exhaust, which I think it's plenty far enough away. And then I have everything up here connected except for this plug right here, which is the mass airflow sensor. So I don't have the intake on yet. I will be putting that on in a second. And so I have the Cadillac. I also have this Cadillac shift cable right here. I need to plumb it into the car, as well as modify the shifter, because you have to use a Cadillac gear selector inside the car. So I'm gonna have to figure that out, because it has different length positions. So the one in the Grand Prix doesn't technically work, because it'll have it like in between gears, which will burn up the transmission. So what I'm going to do now is let's throw the air box back in, connect the mass airflow sensor. Actually, before I do that, I'll put the crossover pipe in, then the air box, and then we'll have all that buttoned up. And then all I'll have to do is put it on the lift, and then I'll just wrap all this wiring up. I'll also put the radiator probably in after I get the air box on. All I'll have to do, I think, is pull the bolts out of this. I think it unbolts. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I messed up. I don't know. We'll find out. I've done pretty much everything that I could do to the Grand Prix for today. So I have the engine in there with the transmission, with the solid mounts. We're all pretty much buttoned up. Need to get a new axle for the driver's side. For some reason, that axle is binding. Not exactly sure why. I also try to put that air box on, and it doesn't go on because the bottom of the box interferes with this, and it's on the back side of the filter side, so I can't really modify that. I'll probably just end up doing one of those cone filters for now, because we will be turbo, so I'll have to mount a turbo somewhere, and most likely I'll have to move these ECUs and everything, because the turbo is probably going to mount in this area somewhere. So other than that, the wiring is pretty much all the way done. Like I said before, I still have some wiring that I'm going to do next time I have it on the lift, because I'm kind of getting tired of pushing this thing around. So the next time I have it on the lift, I want to have it remote tuned. I want a bunch of stuff. So once I get it off the lift, I can just drive it. So I'll also replace this axle and button up everything underneath. There isn't too much. There's just a few little wiring things that I want to loom and tuck up. The crossover pipe is now bolted in. We have the intake, as much of the intake as we had or could use bolted in, and I'll do one of those filters. On this side, I have the fuse box bolted in, but for some reason, I'm not exactly sure why, there's these two big long powers and grounds going from the battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to still put the battery right here, but I'm going to just run the power up to here, and then run the power from here to the alternator, and then it goes down to the starter. There's no reason to have a whole nother wire, because that's a pretty large wire anyway. And then I'll just have the ground go from the battery directly to the block, and then I'll probably put a strap from the block over to the upper bolt right here or right there, or something like that. And then this wire, I need to pull the alternator next time it's on the lift, because it needs to go up here. It must have just fell down because all that fuse box and everything was just kind of hanging down. But I'm really happy that we are where we're at. Also, another thing, I need to route the shifter cable or shifter selector cable inside the car and take out the Grand Prix one. I'll be doing quite a few things to get this thing all buttoned up, but I think in the next video we can actually take her on her first maiden voyage. And I'm not exactly sure if I messed up. I thought this came out. So if I can't get the radiator and the fan in with the engine in there, I might have to drop the engine again to put the radiator and the fan in. So we'll see, but I'm not 100% sure if that's going to have to happen. So we'll just kind of play it by ear in the next video. I don't want to put it in right now because I still have that wiring on the bottom. I want to still be able to reach in there. So I'm going to end the video here. If you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, thumbs up, comment below. As always, see you guys next time.